Was the Michael Jordan of baseball. Michael?
Thanks, Jerry. I think everyone knows exactly what the circumstances are right now in terms of my decision not to play the game of basketball in the NBA. Doesn't mean I'm not going to play basketball somewhere else, but I've talked to all my confidants, my family, my friends. As Jerry has just informed you, to the organization. I even talked to David Stern as of yesterday and even today, and I'm very solid with my decision of not to play the game of basketball in the NBA.
Hello everyone and welcome to the Sports Story Podcast. I'm your host Seiji McSwain, and let's get right into today's episode. So this episode I believe I wrote last week while I posted my draft grades video. And this one I'm going to be going over the Michael Jordan suspension and the theories surrounding Michael Jordan's suspension. And I think it's a pretty good thing to look into. It was briefly mentioned in The Last Dance, mainly due to it just being before The Last Dance timeline, because it was the last 3 years that they got the three-peat. But overall, I mean, it's a really good theory to look into, in my opinion. I got most of my information from the BuzzFeed Unsolved on it. I think it's a really good series that BuzzFeed has, and also just a really good video. If you do want to see that, that's where I got most of my information from. But it's really just a really good video, and I can just do some more commentary on here. So, with a matter of fact, let's go right into the episode. So to first start off with the actual story, I guess we could see here, starting from the initial retirement. So in October 1993, one day before the start of training camp, Michael Jordan announced his retirement. And Jordan, he was already dominating the league. Okay, he's the sole player. He's basically the NBA at this point. He already had won 3 championships. Once you win 3 championships and you're a star player of the team, you've basically solidified, a seat in the Hall of Fame, basically, unless you do some sports betting, which we'll get into later. He's a really good player at this point. I mean, everybody knows who Michael Jordan is. He has the Jordan shoe brand. At this point, I think he did have the McDonald's meal, so obviously, the kids knew him. Basically, every age knew who Michael Jordan was, and basically everybody on the planet knew who Michael Jordan was. Maybe even people, out in space, Mars probably knows who Michael Jordan is at this point. And moving on from his retirement, Jordan played baseball for the Birmingham Barons, which is the AA team for the Chicago White Sox, which, that first started to make some conspiracies, but we'll get into that later. I believe that's the third ranked team. If you go down the White Sox list. So you got the White Sox, and then the AAA team, and then the AA team, which Michael Jordan played for, which he was not that great. He was pretty average if you were to see a basketball player play baseball. That's what you'd see Michael Jordan doing, because obviously he played the sport before when he was a kid, but he played basketball for a reason, and he was a really good basketball player. Let's just say the skills did not transfer over to the baseball realm. And so then in March 18th of 1995, Michael Jordan announced his return to the NBA via fax, which is really old, by his manager, just simply stating, "I'm back," signed by MJ. And so, that's where, he comes back, wins the 3 rings, gets the 6 championships, and basically his career goes on from there. We all know what happened. But here is where this brings up the big question. Why would Jordan retire? Even though he was at the top of the league, okay, and one of his reasons that he said that he was going to retire was because of the lack of competitiveness that he felt at this point at this stage in his career. I mean, he already won 3 championships. I mean, maybe, he had 3 championships. He had the MVP. He had the defensive player of the year. Blah 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 blah. Right. I think it's a great. If you look at it through the big scope of things, if you just were to see the stats, you could say that's a complete career right there. 3 championships, MVP, defensive player of the year. What he won in 1993, 94, 95. So, what about 11 or so years in the league? No, I don't know. I think he was drafted in the mid 80s, but there's neither here nor there. But I mean, I think he had a really complete career, and you could just say, he kind of just felt that basketball was, it was too easy for him, I guess you could say. But I mean, as you saw in the Last Dance documentary, Michael Jordan has a very high motor for competitiveness, okay? And, that kind of contributes as to what we'll see later on in the video and the episode, is that his competitiveness might have gotten the best of him. And it's kind of interesting to see that somebody that's so invested in what he's doing and so competitive would just retire on a dime like that, especially when he's practically on top of the NBA world. And one reason could be because of the murder of his father that happened in the very same year, 1993, I believe in July. And that was said to be a robbery gone wrong. The murderers were never found. The identities were never found of them. So, kind of went as an unsolved case for a while. And his father was a big baseball fan, and he has been cited as saying that he wished that Michael Jordan had played baseball instead of basketball. And you could say that he retired the game of basketball so he could pursue the baseball career that he did have, in honor of his father, which is a really good point, and is a point that a lot of people point to as per this early retirement. And the second reason could just be because, again, he was bored of the game and he just wanted to try new things. And why not try something that you tried before as a kid, and you're gonna come back to it. And if you're so bored of basketball, go ahead and try another competitive sport like baseball that you can kind of just go into, and you can develop a game and maybe develop another greatness, things there. That could be another reason. But obviously his quick retirement, put up some theories in the early 90s, and which possibly pointed to a cover up for a gambling suspension. So now that's the main theory here, is that the Jordan retirement was really just a gambling suspension. And I'll go more into it here later on in the video as to why they would cover up the gambling suspension and have Michael Jordan just leave the game entirely. Now again, his gambling, where you could bring in this competitiveness, maybe he was just too competitive, and he was gambling a lot, and the need to win possibly got ahead of him. Now, starting with this timeline here, May 1991, in a playoff series against the 76ers, Michael Jordan used a 2-day break in the series to go to Atlantic City, which he then returned at 6:30 a.m. and returned at a team practice at 10 a.m. Okay, and that it didn't look, that doesn't look too good. Maybe one slip up, happens. He's gone for a long time, comes back. I mean, he's still good though. Okay, don't get me wrong, he's still good when he left the game, so shouldn't really be that much of a problem, right? But in May 1993, during the Eastern Conference Finals against the Knicks, Jordan went to Atlantic City again until 2 a.m. and returned to New York just 10 hours before a game. And Jordan said that he usually took these types of trips just to unwind and kind of be able to relax if he was a little too anxious about a game that was happening, which is a valid point here. But he was up gambling, and there's no NBA rule against gambling, but it could lead to pretty bad things. But so far with his endeavors in Atlantic City, really the only bad thing was that he was just out for a long time, came back. He was still able to play really well in these games. They won 3 championships for a reason during the playoff series, so it was pretty easy. It was pretty easy for Michael Jordan at this point. Just hearing this, that he went to Atlantic City, returned 10 hours before a game, and then still dropped like a 30 piece in the playoffs, in a playoff series nonetheless. So that was pretty interesting to hear. But then in December 1991, bringing it back, came out that Jordan participated in high stakes gambling, especially with a known drug dealer and money launderer, James Slim Booler. Now, James Slim Booler, drug dealer, money launderer, obviously not great company, and not somebody that the NBA wants their star player to be associated with. Definitely, especially since the NBA is just coming off the crack epidemic in the 70s, 80s. So, now they're coming off the 90s, and they really want to rebrand here. Especially with David Stern as commissioner now, they're really trying to crack down on the crack epidemic. So definitely having Michael Jordan be involved, or at least associated with somebody that deals with drugs, is not ideal for the league. But when investigators possessed Booler's belongings, they found a check that was made out to Booler for $57,000, written by Michael Jordan, written and signed by Michael Jordan. Jordan claimed that the $57,000 was money he owed betting on golf games, and money he borrowed to pay off gambling debts. Again, you see how gambling has negatively affected Michael Jordan right here. He's had to go to Booler as somebody that he can get money from to pay off the gambling debts, and also the competitive spirit of Michael Jordan, betting on these golf games, which you'll see here later on. He'll bet on some more golf games, it's nothing that out of hand, but really, again, just that competitive spirit could have caused Michael Jordan to really fall into this whole gambling, and cause the NBA possibly to suspend him for about a year and a half, just for gambling here. And then February 19th, 1992, bail bondsman Eddie Dow was murdered by 4 men, who nobody knows the identities of the 4 men. He was robbed of $20,000 that he had in a briefcase, but all the papers in the briefcase were still kept in there. And in the briefcase, there were three checks written by Michael Jordan, totaling up to $108,000. Now, these funds also are gambling related, as he did say earlier, or like later on, he did say that they were gambling related. Now, again, being Michael Jordan being so closely associated with people like Booler, and now being involved in this case with Eddie Dow, which he was killed, and then subsequently had the papers of Michael Jordan in his briefcase. Doesn't really look too good for Michael Jordan at this point. Drug dealer, he's associated with a drug dealer, and now he's associated possibly with a murder that happened, that had documents with his money on them, and they weren't the checks, they were actually just photocopies. So it was more of a reason to kind of suspect Jordan, but didn't really go far with Jordan. And then in March of 1992, the NBA launched an investigation into Jordan's gambling. While gambling doesn't go against the NBA rules again, they wanted to make sure Jordan wasn't betting on any games. Then the 3-week investigation resulted in no evidence that he had bet on any games. So that was really the main reason why the NBA was so worried about Jordan gambling, his gambling addiction, just because they didn't know if he's betting on games. Like most players, again, in the crack epidemic, they would bet on. They would tell people to bet on games. They would throw the games, shaving points as they call it. I wouldn't suspect that of Jordan. If anything, he would just be scoring the points, just due to his competitive nature again. But yeah, definitely, they just wanted to see what it would be if he did bet on any games, but he didn't. And then June 3rd, 1993, Richard Esquinas released a book claiming that he had been betting on golf games with Jordan and racked up a debt of $1,250,000, which was negotiated down to $300,000. Now, Jordan then came out and said that he only owed Esquinas $300,000 and not the original $1.25 million that Esquinas did say that he owed at first. Now, off of this book investigation, but I do have to add one thing. Jordan, right at the end of the first investigation, Jordan did say that he would not be gambling with any dangerous people. I guess you could say. And once this book came out, the NBA launched another investigation, and they launched the investigation. It was going for a little bit, and then. October 16th, 1993, about, I believe, a week before Jordan's first retirement, David Stern, the NBA commissioner, said that the investigation had not concluded any evidence, which was a little suspicious because, I guess you could just say that you stopped because he's not in the NBA anymore, so why would you be worrying about him having debts and everything. Now, one invalid point to this theory is that everybody points at Michael Jordan saying that if David Stern lets him back in the league. But really, with that claim, if he's retiring, he would need somebody to, at least let him back in. So the commissioner would have to allow him back into the league. As well as the Bulls organization to allow him back into the league in order to play. But overall, it was not looking too good for Jordan at the point of this second investigation. And it is a possibility that David Stern did, tell him to kind of lay low. He was like, okay, we're going to suspend you for, a season here. You're going to have to lay low about it. And then you can come back once it's over. You just have to retire here. So then, it protects the face of the NBA. Imagine if now LeBron, basically another face of the league, Giannis, Luka, Devin Booker, one of these players just came out and, was linked to something like really bad. Obviously, it's not going to paint the prettiest picture for the NBA. And especially at the NBA at this time was really just starting to, make a mainstream revival again, coming off again the crack epidemic of the 70s and 80s. They really needed to boost popularity again, and as a league that was on the verge of possibly ending in the early 80s, late 70s, and now they're booming due to Michael Jordan's popularity. That could, obviously you want the poster child of your company to stay clean in the eyes of the public, and if he's directly linked to gambling with multiple bad people, and people that he surrounded himself is not good, then you don't want that coming out and really affecting your brand as a company. So why not just have him retire and nobody really questions it, and the investigation after he retires, and just keep that suspension on hold until he's able to come back. But that's just a theory there. I mainly do believe in the one that he was playing baseball for his father due to it just being so close to his father's death, but I'm not sure. I think it's an interesting theory, and one that could be debated about. And that'll be all for today's episode. Thank you for listening all the way through. or watching all the way through if you're on YouTube. Make sure you leave a comment on if you do believe in the theory, or if you have another reasoning as to why Michael Jordan would retire so quickly due to his rise in fame. Make sure you share the video with anybody you think would be interested in hearing about this theory about Michael Jordan. Besides that, that's all I have for today's episode. Again, thank you for listening and watching all the way through. Have a great rest of your day. Goodbye.